Hello. Well, friends, your noble Swan is here to guide you through the insanity that is the Swan system. So, as you know, I was incarcerated for 16 years and I worked very hard as an autistic adult to create a system that if you were an alien and you woke up on this planet, you'd have a basic structural guide with which to plug in whatever your hobbies or your passions or your interests are, and you would be able to survive until you get to a place of living instead of just surviving, which I see way too many people dealing with since I've been released from prison. It's been about 6 years now I've been out, and it's been an adventure, and I've seen a lot, and that's kind of what this system is for. Is if any of it appeals to you, you could take what works, plug in what works, and you're off to the races. And if none of it does, then I'll try to keep it succinct, and hopefully you find what you're looking for. So that's kind of the basic, long and the short of this. So I'm just going to jump right in if that's cool with y'all. And we'll get this kind of hammered out. And then if people have questions in the comments, I can elaborate or do other videos. But in essence, the Swan system, which as you can see, I'm looking at my notes here, is serenity when accepting now. So serenity is just, you could have all kinds of chaos in your life, but in the eye of the storm, that's serenity, is finding peace in that, and that helps you to make better decisions under stress, because ultimately that's what benefits us the most. So we're going to go with the elements. There's 4 elements and there's 4 virtues. We're keeping it simple. 4 and 4. I know 4 can mean negative things in some parts of the world, but when you add 4 and 4, it means something positive. So again, sometimes there's mystery within things, but I tried to choose things to make sure that it applies to the most people with the least amount of steps. So before I go off on that tangent and overcomplicate things, we'll just start in the beginning. So we have the 4 elements, which is fire, water, air, and earth. And then each one of those has sort of like a more of a physical part or a structural part. And then you have the 4 virtues. So in this case, it would be courage, reason, kindness, and wisdom. And I'll expand more on those in a little bit. And if you add those 2 things, the elements plus virtues, it yields life fulfillment, which would be advanced immune function, meaning your immune system is stronger. Hopefully you'll get sick less often, or if you are sick, you'll be able to have a better quality of life, which I just recently went through. Achievement of goals, self-esteem, tactfulness, and acceptance. And tactfulness, if you haven't heard the term, tact is knowing when to do the right thing at the right time. So tactfulness is an excellent skill to have in your tool belt. So that's kind of in a nutshell what the system is. So I will break. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump right in. So with fire is going to be somatic warm-ups with affirmations and visualizations. Water is kinesthetic awareness, facing the great wave, and confluence. And no worries, I'll elaborate on these more later. Air is speed, balance, and range of motion. So like our physical range of motion. How does your body move? Do you have a lot of injuries? Are there different things you're coping with? Again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds right now, in detail, because we can do that later. And then earth, which is mindfulness or meditations, nature, culture. If you study different cultures around the world, a people's history, values, skills, and arts or technology. So if you have an interest in that, like a different culture, you can get a lot from that, and it expands your worldview and it benefits you. Knowledge is power and all that. There's some truth to that, for sure. The more you learn about the world, the more it's difficult for people to put different ideas in your head that you may not agree with. So now we'll break down the virtues. Courage, which is genuineness, perseverance, reflection, grief process. Reason, which is the next virtue, is observation, contemplation, goal setting, and EFT, which stands for emotional freedom technique. It's essentially tapping on different acupressure points and repeating affirmations to activate a parasympathetic nervous response. And no worries, I'll get into that later, but it's a really powerful practice to have, even especially if, like when I was in prison, you have nothing. So what's in your mind, like a survival situation, is how you cope with that. So thankfully, I had a lot of tools to draw on, so I was never bored, and I was able to make the experience my own, wrongly incarcerated or not. Then we have kindness, patience, compassion, empathy, forgiveness. And that's really powerful. Kindness is probably one of the more challenging ones, but if you can master it, it opens a lot of opportunities, a lot of doors for you. And then wisdom, which is elders, experience, gratitude, and clarity. And that's a really awesome place to be too. So I'll just sort of read this off and then we can kind of break it down more from there. The SWAN system integrates everything you need to become a complete human being. I'm actually going to scooch this over. It combines the 4 elements with 4 virtues for a simplified approach to better health, coping skills, self-awareness, and empowerment. This system is designed for complete mind-body integration. So when you hear me say soma or somatic, soma is just the Greek word for your body, your physical body. So mind-body integration just basically means your ability to use your mind to affect your body's health or stability, or using your body to affect your mind. So if we're really upset and having a hard time, there's exercises with the body that will calm the mind down by activating the vagus nerve, for example, is the largest nerve in the body, and I learned about that in karate. There's deeper stances that will kind of calm you down. Through simple practices, we can bring stillness to the raging river of our minds by slowing down our thoughts and balancing our feelings, giving us clarity. So that's kind of the practice here, is slowing things down or speeding them up when it's appropriate. The body becomes strong and flexible along with the mind. Immune function will improve. Also, pain and inflammation will be reduced. Anyone may practice the SWAN system no matter the age, body type, or beliefs. Again, I really tried to keep this open-ended so you can just plug in what works for you and get started. The level of practice and length of practice is individualized to be flexible, fun, and fulfilling. So fulfillment is like when we have purpose in our life and it guides us with a reason to live. So once you get that fulfillment, that's the real satisfaction. You're no longer just being distracted from the hardships of life. You're getting fulfillment by creating and sharing or improving your situation, whatever, working towards a goal. Those would be examples of that. So here I'll break down the 4 elements and their constituents, and then I will discuss the 4 virtues and some examples. Fire. The element of fire burns away negative feelings or unhealthy beliefs. We are bombarded with thoughts that are not our own, and we can quickly become overwhelmed. Practices like Tai Chi, Qigong, walking, hiking, with or without affirmations. And an affirmation is just using 2 very powerful words, which is I am. So I, me, I am intelligent. I am successful, I am healthy, I am, gonna succeed eventually, I am determined. So those things sound silly, but most successful people do some version of affirmations. And what I typically look at is best responses. So for example, the Olympic committees for the Olympic Games and NASA for science and space exploration. They have to produce results, so they're not going to waste time with practices that don't work, that don't serve you to benefit you. And that's why things like visualizations and affirmations have been proven time and time again with numerous studies. They absolutely benefit you exponentially, and they cost you nothing. They're free. So every day, even while you're brushing the teeth, you can burp, 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 whatever works for you. As long as you're putting good stuff in your body from you, it's going to strengthen you and benefit you. And it's a slow and steady way to clear negative beliefs if you've been in an abusive relationship or an unhealthy, toxic work environment or incarcerated or whatever. And everybody has their story. Everybody has endured pain and abuse or something like that at some point. This is how you get free of that. Visualizations are taking your affirmations to the next level and picturing your goals, wants, or dreams in your mind. So now that's when you're starting to make this real of like, okay, I want to make things better. I'm in a bad situation and I want to work on improving that, which again happens to everybody. Sometimes in the middle of our lives, we want to change our career or leave an unhealthy relationship or whatever. I'm just giving out random examples. So you want to feel those goals when you visualize things, because that starts to give you the excitement and the chemicals in your brain, the endorphins that help us to reinforce new behaviors. That's power. That's empowering to say, okay, I'm going to keep feeling this joy because why not? It benefits you right now to start feeling good now because you do deserve it. There are companies and groups of people that spend a lot of time and money to convince us that we are not whole, that we need things or to do things to be happy. And as you get older, you start to learn a lot of that's illusion. Happiness is real, but it's cyclic. Just like things in nature follow cycles, they follow patterns. So things may be bad right now, but inevitably they are going to get better. Just like when things are good, you're allowed to enjoy them because inevitably there will be hardship again. And that's kind of the secret in life, is to have the skills that when those things happen that you can just respond and start right in and then get from surviving back to living again. That's the goal of this system, is to get you where you're living again. Whether you've been incarcerated or, like I said, abused or whatever you've been through, this can help to get you there. Or in my case, if you're autistic and you have no idea what's expected of you, this is kind of a rough guideline that you could work with your team or your therapist or whoever to be able to apply those things effectively. So affirm them as real, and they will be. Okay, element of water. The element of water is about flow. So fire is building the fire. It's burning out those old negative beliefs or repetition, like repetitive behaviors or things that don't serve us or help us anymore. That's kind of about getting the stuff circulating and up and out. Water is now we're going with the flow. We're circulating. When we let go of conditioned behaviors, we get out of our own way. So a conditioned behavior might be something that we do subconsciously, and it keeps getting us into trouble or where we don't want to be in life. We revisit intrusive thoughts less and less. Many traditional and collective arts represent the element of water. An example of water is kinesthetic awareness. So kinesthetic is like how things feel. Feeling your surroundings. A great example is like closing your eyes and brushing your teeth, or moving some things, or like in my case, showering, because I fumble everything. Yes, I dropped the soap in prison, and thankfully nothing happened to me. I'm very grateful I could fight a little bit. But we all had a good laugh, and I was like, I want to die. It was very funny in hindsight. But yeah, if you're like me and you're clumsy and uncoordinated, kinesthetic awareness is a really useful thing. Another great example, if you've ever practiced martial arts, is like wrestling or doing jujitsu. When your eyes are closed, you feel your way through it, and you notice that you're using a lot more muscles than you thought you were, or your balance is a lot worse than you thought it was going to be. And that's a good thing because it cultivates humility, which we'll get to later, but it also helps to improve that. And another example here is another way is through improving your hand-eye coordination. And they've proven many times even something as simple as video games can improve your hand-eye coordination. So if you like sports, rock out. If you like dance, rock out. If you want to kick around a soccer ball or football, rock out. If instead those things don't speak to you, you can still get benefits from games. I feel like, again, a lot of this stuff is moderation, but that's just me. Your path is your own path. Question everything. Don't listen to me. I'm some idiot on the internet. But this is a guide for you on your journey, on your adventure. So it's what speaks to you, what calls to you. I'm not a swan because I want to be. I'm a swan because that's my path. Yeah, you don't get to choose your animal totem. It kind of chooses you. So facing the great wave, which is the metaphor that I like to use, is the tsunami or the great wave, as they call it in Japan. It's a symbol that's appeared a lot in my life, and my father committed suicide, and it was a symbol that he really loved, and it spoke to him. He was a big fan of Japanese culture, but he very much was into martial arts, and a lot of those were from Japan. And it's something that, again, speaks to me. So I tend to refer to that because it's something we all can relate to on some level. If you're facing a giant wave that's coming towards you, you have to be very resolute and very disciplined to not panic and to think more clearly and make better decisions, which is ultimately what this system is about. So if you hear reference to the Great Wave, it just means an event in your life that has caught you off guard or blindsided you. And this is how to hopefully move beyond that. So facing the great wave is training one's hippocampus, the part of the brain linked to long-term memory, and neuroscience changes all the time, but this is as I've last read it, so forgive me if that's not true anymore, but it's a guide. To respond a certain way under duress or during fight or flight. So a sympathetic nervous response is fight or flight. It's when we go, and a big tiger jumps out and our brain dumps cortisol, the stress hormone, so we can respond hopefully more appropriately. But it also gets in our way when we're having constant cortisol dumps in everyday life. It's not meant to be that serious all the time. So it may not be life or death, but your brain doesn't always know the difference. You can learn the skills needed to respond to social situations and physical confrontations. So that would be like your self-defense or like someone who's bullying you, etc. And then social situations are when people do the same things, but they don't want to get in trouble, so they find a way to be manipulative and do it socially, which is another thing in prison that you have to deal with pretty regularly. And I know for a lot of people in school, it's also a common problem. You can learn the skills needed to respond to social situations and physical confrontations. An example would be EFT, which I refer, emotional freedom technique, which is tapping with affirmations. Sitting, another option is to sit with your limbs spread out or standing in the starfish pose. And that I learned from Amy Cuddy, who did a number of TED Talks and explains about how, again, somatically using the body, we can calm the mind to then make better decisions instead of just acting on fight or flight. We lose our temper, we might yell, we might, in my case, have like a meltdown or even a seizure if it's severe enough. So avoiding those kind of overstimming things is a very powerful skill to have. All right, cool. So in jiu-jitsu, for example, confluence is creating harmony by absorbing or moving with an attack. Somebody's drawing an attack, they're striking at you, you want to move and disarm that by then just redirecting and hopefully gently bringing them down to the ground, where then you can reason with that person instead of just using force yourself and striking weaknesses of the human anatomy or other things that is way too much force to what's applicable. And I'm just using that as a metaphor. You could do the same thing socially, that somebody maybe makes a joke that I take literally and then I cut right back with a really rude or hurtful statement. That was too much. And that's kind of where water is nice, because you learn to go with the flow and bring things out in a more natural or organic way. So it's not too much, it's just enough. That would be your tact or tactfulness. So, as not to take damage, so we're accepting the attack, or move safely away from danger or drama. You've been through enough already. You deserve to flow like water and fill the void left by fire. And that's the element of water. So air. The element of air oxygenates the blood carried by water. We are mostly made up of water, and air is how we feed ourselves. We are never alone, and air reminds us of what it means to be alive. And yes, I'm oversimplifying, but these are just meant to kind of be, again, a rough guide on you. So we are never alone, meaning even the bacteria in our gut. There's been things I've read in anatomy and physiology where we have more gut bacteria in our gut than cells in our body. So we're never alone. We got a lot of critters working very hard to help us stay healthy and strong and think clearly. So we want to take care of them too. It's not just the me show, and that helps me to stay humble. So any form of movement will work. Pushing your limits in a safe way is important as you set new goals and reach for the stars. Any form of movement will work. Walking, running, dance, gardening, archery. I've been doing rebounding because I have a lot of injuries, so it's just like on a trampoline. It's enough that it's low impact, but I'm getting some movement. I'm circulating air. It doesn't have to be extreme. Getting up and moving is important. Find your passion, take a breath, and feel the wind on your face. And that's true, because that brings us again back to the moment. That's nature, which we'll learn about in the next element, which is earth. The element of earth is how we ground ourselves. We are made of stardust, and having something to bring us down to earth is empowering. Meditation and or mindfulness is the act of experiencing spirituality. We're not learning about it, we're now experiencing it. That's why meditation is such a powerful thing, or mindfulness practices. It trains your brain to just be. The word Zen, as I learned in martial arts, means stillness. That's all Zen is the act of being still, stilling the mind. A frog just being a frog on a lily pad, nothing more. And it's much more easier said than done, but it's a practice. And every time we do that, we train our brain to come right back to the now. Instead of reacting, a warrior acts. They just make a single act and hopefully prevent bad things from happening. That's the plan. And so mindfulness is the act of experiencing spirituality. And when we maintain a practice, we are in awe of something. When we are in awe of something, AWE, we cannot feel anxiety at the same time. Not bad, eh? Discover what you love, then share it with the world. An example of earth would be spending time in nature. It changes the body chemically. It kills cancer cells. It's been proven to many times. And resets bottom-up thinking, going with the flow. Culture expands one's worldview and keeps things in perspective with the rest of the world. So bottom-up thinking is like when you go camping, or if you spend a lot of time in nature. Top-down thinking is like, think corporate America would be a great example. It's teaching us to be more logical and organized, but it's also how our brain regresses back to like survival thinking. Everything is in extremes, whereas bottom up is more shades of gray. Again, you're going with the flow, like, oh, I'm going to go collect water, then I'm going to go stoke the fire, then I'm going to do this and maybe make something to eat. It's really healthy to reset our brains, and it's been proven to it lowers blood pressure. There's just a lot of health benefits. If you get a chance, even in a park, breathe in the trees. In Japan, it's called Shinjin-roku, or bathing in the trees, and it's been, like I said, proven many times. Fact check me. It's good stuff, and it's free, so you could multitask and do that with your practice. So that's the element of earth, is that grounding and reconnecting to something that's greater than us, whether that's nature or spirituality or whatever. It is an important practice, because if it's always the me show, I'm going to fail, because it's not the me show. That's not how life works. And it's a difficult concept, but it can be mastered, and it doesn't take a lifetime. So the 4 elements combined clear out the things that cloud our minds, make us sick, or limit our potential. Burn them out with fire, feed the body with water and air, then ground it to the earth. Balance gives us more options, and that lowers stress and anxiety while simultaneously simplifying the present. And that's ultimately the goal here, is to be in a place where we can balance things and get past survival to surthrival, as I've heard it said before, but basically living again. Like the grief process, like this is a perfect example. It can turn your whole life upside down to lose someone that you love. And knowing the grief process, and as you get older, which I am, you know that you're going to be okay. You know that it's going to mean more now because the things you accomplish are for that person. So you can't do it with them, but you can do it for them. And you still get to feel that joy and send that out into the universe, or whatever you believe, that you're sending good vibes out. And that will resonate with those around you and give them courage in times of grief. So for what I have seen in my life, I can share that with you. It's good stuff. It's worth putting time into, because there will be times when all of us need help, and there's also times where we get to help, and that's why it's worth sticking around and sticking with things to develop skills like this. Courage. The virtue of courage is how we face the great waves of our lives. We all must face things we do not have control over and must endure. To endure is to suffer patiently. So endurance is a skill that you can develop, and you have to do it all the time in prison. You have to learn to suffer and be patient. And it's a drag, as you'd imagine. And it doesn't work like without guidance. That's part why prisons are just human cash crops. They're not really helping anybody. You can choose to take the initiative and benefit yourself and your situation, but inherently it's not a great thing. But that's a whole nother conversation. But you can make any prison, which there are many prisons in life, prisons of the mind, and I'll get into that in a bit. You can make it good. It's an ability within your mind and your own perception of reality, which is something we have control over, okay? So to endure is to suffer patiently. It sucks, I'm not going to lie, but it is our adversities that shape us. Courage comes from within, and we forge the sword that cleaves the great waves with certain traits. So again, practicing these skills, training the mind, listening to the body, back and forth, finding balance. That's how we forge the ethereal sword that we use to cleave the major challenges in our life. It starts on a journey within, and then we can take the journeys without, outside of ourselves in life, and have our adventures. It takes courage to be genuine. We put ourselves out there and feel vulnerable when we are genuine. Like any skill, it gets easier with time, and being genuine is authentic and is an amazing way to connect with people. And that's very true. I've had some really awesome experiences where I was surprised people let down their guard and they just explained things to me, especially as a violent felon. That's a difficult thing, but it's really awesome when like somebody in HR takes the time to just tell you how it really is. Like, that's what I needed to hear. So an amazing way to connect with people. Deception may grant people short-term gains, but they become a house of cards. So people that cheat or lie or steal, which we've all seen, much of the time, eventually, I've seen that a lot in prison too, it becomes a house of cards, a flimsy structure that is sure to collapse and bring hardship to those involved. And I've seen it many, many times. Genuineness will build friendships that last a lifetime while giving one the ability to discern truth from falsehood in others. And I found that to be very true. I am the easiest person in the world to take advantage of, but that's how I made it through prison, which is a place with a lot of people that are very good at taking advantage of you. And by developing this and being genuine, it made it easier to discern much of the time when I would still my mind and be in the moment if someone was trying to take advantage of me. You get that little voice, you get that gut feeling or intuition. And that really helped me to avoid a lot of difficulties and hardships, but also people recognized that I was authentic and genuine, and it made them more likely to want to look out for me or want to give me advice. And I soaked up all the advice I could get because that was very wise and proved to really help me later on. Perseverance. So this is still under the virtue of courage. Perseverance is the ability to return to any thought or action. We can return any time, so taking a break is totally cool. You don't have to do it all at once. Each time we grow a bit more, so it's cumulative. Anytime you put a little bit into it, you get a benefit. So it's not an all or nothing thing. If genuineness is the edge of our sword, then perseverance is the forging of that steel. It strengthens us to withstand anything. There is a saying in Japan, piled up specks of dust will eventually become a mountain. So no matter how small the little bits may seem, if you keep sticking with things and persevere and meet and draw people to you with like-minded passions, you can make a mountain. You can do great things. It's just perseverance. It's sticking with it. It's a practice, and it's okay sometimes when you have to put things on the back burner. You can get back to them later. It does happen. I've seen it all the time, which is encouraging. Things in life sometimes get in the way, but if it's meant to be and you're passionate about it, you can persevere. It takes courage to reflect on our mistakes and poor choices. The reflection we see on the surface of the water is illusion. And a lot of great swordsmen in history wrote about that. The truth is deeper. The pain of reflection hollows us out to become deeper people. And mistakes are successes in learning. So reflection can be a drag. I wouldn't dwell on reflection. That's a common mistake. I've done it. But it is an important skill to look back so we can move forward with more wisdom and experience, to be honest with ourselves. So the truth is deeper, and the pain of reflection hollows us out. So it purifies us again from those negative beliefs or intrusive thoughts or things that get in our way where it's like, that's not real. That's the illusion on the surface of the water. Once you get beneath it and you're really honest with yourself, that's when you start to grow. The little plant starts to sprout. And then you just give it sun and water and hopefully the rains come and we grow. That's growth. Recognizing the grief process is paramount to moving beyond the dualities of good and bad. Denial, bargaining, anger, depression, acceptance. Welcome to the human condition. And I know that some animals do grieve as well, but this is, again, meant just for us as the human condition, that don't be hard on yourself for being human. I spent way too much of my life basically torturing myself because I was human and I wasn't mechanically perfect. And there's nothing wrong with striving for elements of perfection, but that hopefully will be tempered with prudence, with, I don't want to say magnanimity for yourself, but kindness for yourself, benevolence for yourself. It's important to balance that out. Reason. The Greeks deeply valued their ability to reason. Our minds can be a prison or they can be a paradise. One's ability to reason out our perception of reality is the first step to change. When we use reason, we can build a life to endure any great wave. So there's that word endure again. So our ability to reason is just that. In prison, I learned people create their own hells in their mind. Look at a lot of horror movies are a great example of that. Even if our physical world may be amazing. I've been rich, I've been poor, and I could tell you, during both of those times, I had immense pain and suffering and immense joy and gratitude. And it was a construct of the mind. So one's ability to reason out our perception of reality is the first step to change. That's where having any kind of practice helps you to move beyond those dualities again of, oh, this is good or this is bad. We move beyond it where we can see past our own pain. And that's wisdom, is seeing past our own pain, which we'll get to in a little bit. So if we can endure, we can suffer patiently through the great waves of our lives. And that's why reason is awesome. So observation is the ability to watch ourselves in the moment. When we practice mindfulness, we return to the moment, stillness, Zen. When we are in a state of observation, time slows down and our potential accelerates. And this is a great skill for prison too, or just life in general. So the swan watches over the nest while eating and bathing. Without any effort, the swan has accepted the now. So slowing time down is a great skill to have because life goes too fast. And it happens to all of us, and it accelerates as you get older. So learning how to slow things down and be present is powerful. Just like if you need goals and you're in a bad situation, speeding time up is a very useful skill. And knowing how to do that and try to get as much done as you can whilst, this is tough, finding that balancing point of, okay, now I need to slow down. Because I've absolutely done that where I'm a freight train and I'm crushing it. Get out of the way, and I get a lot done, but then I undo myself because I sacrifice everything for my health to meet those initial goals, but then all the other long-term ones, they start to crumble. There's that house of cards again because I wasn't balanced. I wasn't in the moment. Contemplation gives us infinite potential to set goals. Problem solve, design, create, and share. Question everything. Habits speed time up. Sometimes this is an asset, something that benefits you, but when we slow down, we gain more options. Using reason to examine our best options empowers us to make good decisions. Goal setting. Goal setting gives us something to look forward to. This is good stuff. You need that. You need something to look forward to. It's just a great idea. Goals keep us on course through the great waves of life. They also afford us time to relax and enjoy our successes no matter how small. Do not be like me. Make time to celebrate your successes. Because I'm so hard on myself. I want to be a machine. And you miss out on things when you look back. That's like, I should have made more time for that. and we learn, and that's what I get to share now. So hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and celebrate a bit more. Just really allow yourself to feel that joy and the gratitude of all the awesome stuff that is in your life. And there is some you just got to dig sometimes. EFT. I just like this one because it's really simple and you can do it anywhere. Even if you're waiting for a job interview, you can excuse yourself to the restroom and go do some tapping and some affirmations, or do the starfish pose from Amy Cuddy. Again, I want to make sure she gets credit for that. Those are probably the two that I've had the most success with, like as a first responder, with people that were having severe anxiety moments or were very sick, and these practices worked every time. They're awesome and they're fast, and I can go over that later, but it's worth it. So emotional freedom technique is the practice of tapping acupressure points and repeating affirmations. When our emotions are balanced, our thinking levels rise. So emotional levels come down, thinking levels come back up, and that's what you want in a very high stress situation. You want to make good decisions under stress. As the swan swims, the wake left behind reaches both shores. So there's that duality again, that if we're balanced and we're maintaining that, being present, it gives you more options, which actually makes things easier or simpler to make good decisions. Kindness. Kindness is a good virtue. Kindness is a virtue because it can be the most difficult. When we are hurt, wronged, or insulted, we get angry. Anger exists as an emotion to motivate us. If we can remain calm and discharge the events or feelings in a healthy way, we can preserve our kindness to live free of bitterness and anger. So that's like having a forgiveness practice. Mastering forgiveness is such a powerful skill because we let things go. They don't take up that rent-free space in our head, which they do because our brain is holding on to that, trying to protect us. But almost like an allergy, you're having an allergic reaction to something, your body's trying to protect you, but it's hurting you. This would be a similar thing. So it's okay to remember those lessons, but let go of the trauma or the pain, which is a practice. These feelings protect us, but make us sick. So would we rather be right or happy? And that's a choice that sometimes you do. Being right may be more important for you. There we go. I can talk. So it's something that you'll know in the moment which one is the right path. But more often than not, being happy and letting go of things that are egoic is the I hate to say right or wrong, but the wiser course that ends up leading you to your goals or what you want out of the situation more often than not. Patience. Patience is an infinitely useful skill. Ask any parent. Swans may be fierce, but they also will carry their babies on their back and protect them with an 8-foot wingspan. Patience as a skill gives us the ability to preserve our health and our stress levels. When we are patient, we can be strong and calm, wave after wave. So patience is a practice, but it's really, the more patience you have, the more options that you're going to have in life's ups and downs. Compassion. Compassion stays our hand. And it has for me many times when I've been in a position where somebody was defeated and they did evil things to me and I chose not to strike them or to hurt them or to crush them. Maybe socially in a situation I could have fired them or taken their power away or whatever. But I have always done my best to have compassion, to give that person a chance to grow and to make amends. And there's times I've regretted it, but more often than not, I'm glad I did because I have seen people grow from being treated with compassion. But it's tough. It's really hard. Compassion stays our hand. The more compassion we feel, the larger our heart will grow. Love is more powerful than fear. All emotions spring from two chemicals, love and fear. I'm simplifying things, but ultimately this has been proven a lot. So which one do you want more of? So love would be like oxytocin, the love hormone that we produce. Even if you pet a cat or a dog, the cat or dog will produce oxytocin, and so will you. So it's how we form bonds. That's why love is stronger. We want to protect those because we produce oxytocin, and so do they. Same for fear. Fear is cortisol, the stress hormone. And there's been plenty of debates whether that's healthy or unhealthy, but in extremes, which would be top-down thinking, so think when you're at work or school or whatever, you are going to probably encounter a lot more cortisol-producing situations than oxytocin. And that's why it's so important to balance that out if you can, because that will also reinforce positive behaviors, but also your cells. Your body will respond differently to those chemicals. Cortisol can make us weak. It can crush your immune system. There's a lot of different things. So again, balance. How do you decompress? That's a powerful skill to be able to decompress. Empathy. This is a good one. Feeling what others feel is at the core of human bonding. And I've studied many different forms of martial arts from all over the world, and the highest level of all of them is empathy. Same where if you talk to or I should say listen to rather, but soldiers that were in World War II or Vietnam, most of them all say the same thing, is that it's a horrible, horrible thing. I have seen a lot of violence in my life and a lot of bloodshed and horrible things. And I can tell you that empathy is more powerful than that. That's why it's so difficult to do, to not other people, to not see them as different from me. That's tough. That's why there's so many things out there to train us to do just that, so we can be horrible to one another. That's why in this system, I always say question everything. Don't listen to me, because things change. But thankfully, hopefully, you have the tools, even just a phone, to fact check things in your own way and what you feel comfortable with. Go with your gut. Listen to that intuition. And that comes from empathy. Is at the core of human bonding. If we can make time to feel what others are feeling, we can be more kind and supportive. When we have empathy, we are considerate of others and earn their respect. Sound familiar with a lot of the karate schools and stuff? And that's why that stuff's important, because it cultivates humility and empathy, which is important. We want that for the little old lady that's crossing the street, to help her cross the street. It's wild to me people don't do stuff like that as often as they used to, and it's out there. But it's nice to be able to do that stuff because they may help you when you need it. I learned that working retail. So if we encounter those without empathy, this is a good footnote, we know to set a boundary and protect ourselves. And that's ultimately what I've found to be true, is those that are incapable of empathy, such as a psychopath or a sociopath, they struggle with empathy. And there are some that are 100%, which is very, very rare. Even in prison, it's very rare. But in essence, that really benefited me to have some awesome conversations with people I never would have had the opportunity if I hadn't empathized with them and really opened myself up to those conversations. So for what it's worth, empathy makes you stronger, not weaker. It's just a practice, and it's learning when to set those healthy boundaries. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is a skill that leads to freedom. If we carry hate, we carry the pain and trauma long after it is over. When we forgive, we are free. We leave the past behind and only remember the lessons that empower us. So it's okay to just let that stuff go, as long as you remember the lessons. That's the most important part. Everything else is kind of semantics, as they say. The only way out is through. Forgiveness is a practice. The best revenge is to live a good life. And that's really true. I've met many people in prison that they got revenge, that they were angry with or felt threatened by or whatever. And all of them were like, I wish I had just gone off and did something else, taken a new path. The only ones that really were steadfast in that, you could tell that they were sick, and that's all they had. It had become their identity. Or it'd be like, old head, shut up and go rest your neck. Like, no one wants to hear that story you tell every week because it's the defining moment of your life. It's not. That's garbage. And it's the same for you. There is no defining moment of your life because there's always another one. And that's why forgiveness is really important and powerful for you or anybody, because it helps us to let go of all that anger and fear and be free, to feel free from all that. And you can do it. It's just a practice. It's not the easiest thing, but it's totally worth it. And I think living a good life, whatever that is to you, is, I don't want to say revenge, but it's freedom. That's real freedom. The virtue of wisdom is looking back to move forward, culminating in the present. So meaning like now we're back to the now, because that's really all we ever live in is the present. The now is where we live, and when we live with wisdom, we shape our present. Bad times are temporary, and with wisdom, we can see past our own pain, meaning that it gives us foresight, like you hear about with a lot of martial artists and stuff that train for a long time. It's living in nature or observing those patterns of things, and it helps us to see how things are going to turn out before they do. It's not 100%, but it's going to lower your stress a lot, and it makes easing into things a lot less scary and unknowable. That's wisdom. Good times are free to be enjoyed without fear of the cycles of nature. Wisdom lets us move beyond dualities, things like good and bad, because those can change. Something we initially thought might have been horrible ends up being the best thing that could have happened to us. So seeking elders' wisdom, meaning their wisdom, when we aren't sure of something, is a sign of wisdom in ourselves. When you find yourself overwhelmed, seek out a mediator. I always say like a Gandalf, like if you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, this kind of wise wizard. And Gandalf was fallible. Gandalf made mistakes. But ultimately, I think as an archetype, if I can put my Joseph Campbell hat on here for a second, that I think everybody can find some version of that, whoever that is, or the wise old woman in the village. It doesn't even have to be. It could be an older sibling. But it's nice to get, as I expand on here, their clarity and perspective of your mediator will get to the heart of the matter and offer insight into solving the problem or problems. And that's what's so nice is it's just refreshing to get an extra point of view. And sometimes our circle of friends or our family just can't answer that for us, or it's difficult to get a fresh take on things. So that's why I bring that up, only because it's just nice to have more options. And if you have a mediator, like in my case, I have a therapist because I'm autistic, and it's just an ongoing process of discovery. And I'm still blind to so many things that I encounter in daily life. So having insight from a mediator is extremely beneficial. Experience. Experience increases wisdom. The more experience we get, the more tools in your tool belt, so to speak. So the more tools we have to deal with certain situations, like I always look at survival stuff, like if you know how to flint knap and make a shelter and you regularly go out and build fires and tend to fires, all those things, and you can fish or whatever. They're tools in your tool belt. More options can still yield more simplicity. This lowers our stress as we see the big picture and are not victims to our own thoughts and fears. So, as our awareness of the world, things going on, maybe our problems don't seem as big as they were before, and they're easier to break down into smaller bits and benefit the individual to solve those problems or to deal with those in maybe a more efficient way. Everyone needs guidance sometimes, and it may be awkward to ask, but also fulfilling when someone asks you. That's the best feeling in the world for me, is when I can get somebody really laughing or really help somebody. It's the best thing ever. Gratitude. Gratitude is an essential part of being wise. To be grateful for what we have and who we have in our lives yields fulfillment. Really feel it. Memories can be a powerful reminder of things to look forward to. Gratitude is an anchor that keeps us grounded when we face our great waves. So if you have something to be grateful for every day, it's really hard for the world or the events in our lives to pull us off our square, to pull us off of center. That's what the anchor is holding us to that. And that is an extremely powerful skill to have. Because again, even when I was in prison and I was hungry and in pain and all the other things I had to deal with, I would do 4 things I was grateful for every day. Clarity. Clarity is the state we achieve after confusion. And many things in life will confuse us, especially me. Confusion often follows failure, calamity, loss, or misfortune. Wisdom is knowing that after a time, a period of time, and living the virtues, and the elements, that we will find clarity again. The swan swims serenely, then may act out in a state of confusion. After flapping its wings, it discharges the emotion, achieving a state of clarity. So that can mean a lot of things, but in this context, like maybe we say something we don't mean, or we really try for something and just don't get it. We don't achieve it yet. That's what clarity is about, is knowing I'm confused right now, but if I just keep maintaining, the state of clarity will come and I'll know what to do. That's also tactfulness. Again, that knowing to do the right thing at the right time. And that comes from insight, from foresight, from stillness, from observation of nature and observation of oneself. So as we put all the pieces together, that achieves a state of clarity. And that's some pretty awesome stuff. So that is the entire SWAN system. And there's definitely practices you can do, but essentially it's plugging into those things as you need them. But for the most part, it's worked extremely well for me, and I hope it works really well for you or anybody you know that may benefit from these universal principles. I learned many of them from my martial arts journey, also a lot of self-help books, psychology textbooks.